Imagine your job leaves your state. It's not ideal, but it's made even more confusing when there's not a set plan for you to follow. That's what thousands of people in DC are currently dealing with as an agency is set to be pushed out of the Capitol. Plus, we're seeing thousands of contracting jobs go away. Job listings that were once there, they're no longer there. How will this impact you? Let's get into it. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, is leaving its ugly headquarters building in DC. Most people can agree that that building looks like some sort of concrete waffle, like a big old prison. You half expect to see prison bars on those windows. When you walk inside, it's a little bit better, but you can't help but thinking, who approved this design? Why does it look this way? Now, of course, it's outdated on the inside as well, but the real eyesore is when you're walking up to it on the outside. Now, the new building that they're going to be going into, that's the National Science Foundation's modern building in Alexandria, Virginia. That's an improvement without a doubt, but it's not perfect. Something about that building makes me want to take the high end and just kind of compress it down, or take the short end and then push it up so it's level. Right now, it's not level. I don't know why they would design a building like this, but it is an improvement. So the workers that live in Northern Virginia, they might see their commute reduced. The HUD workers that work in Maryland, they might see a longer commute. They might be encouraged to quit, find a different job. The thing about the DC area that you have to understand is people largely come from Virginia and they come from Maryland. They also come from West Virginia and Pennsylvania, but largely it's Virginia and Maryland. So when you take an agency out of DC, the big question is, what side is it going? HUD's current DC building, it needs over $500 million in repairs for issues like leaky pipes, broken elevators, and questionable air quality. I can personally attest to this because I've been in that building over 100 times. I've had to climb the stairwell up to the 9th floor many of times when the elevator was broken. And then as you're walking down the hallway, you see the signs on the water fountains. Please do not drink. The water is not safe to drink. There's been mold issues. There's been countless issues. Now, on the pro side of that building, you're right there by LaFont Plaza. So if you wanted to go grab something to eat, get yourself a quick salad, get yourself a cup of coffee, it's all right there. There's a Starbucks right there. And it's not far from the National Mall. If you like to go look at the monuments, which most people, if you work full-time in DC, the monuments don't interest you that much. So to make this move possible, the NSF's 1,800 employees are being pushed out to make room for HUD's 2,700 workers. I imagine this entire move is way more stressful for the National Science Foundation employees because they don't know where they're going to end up. Now, they'll probably end up in Virginia still, and worst case scenario, they might go to DC, but they don't have a clear vision or a clear plan on where they're going to be. But one place they will not be, and you know this as well as I, they will not be at home. They will not be in their houses because you cannot work from home, not under this administration. The General Services Administration, which manages federal buildings, say that they're working on a staggered transition to minimize disruption, but there's no timeline that exists. The Virginia Governor, Glenn Youngkin, he's saying that he's dusting off locations to present to the NSF. He wants the NSF to stick around. He wants to keep those 1,800 employees. And you know why? You know why that is? It's for that sweet, sweet state tax revenue. He wants to keep that coming, so he doesn't want that agency to leave Virginia. This move is part of a broader plan by the Trump administration to sell off government buildings to reduce the footprint of the federal workforce completely. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to sell this one, right? You got $500 million in deferred maintenance costs. Who's going to want to assume that? That's like trying to sell your house and your roof's destroyed and your windows are cracked in and the plumbing doesn't work. You're going to sell that house you're not going to sell it for a profit. You're crazy if you think you're going to sell it for a profit. And then there's going to have to be this historic preservation clause because they need to keep that waffle-like appearance on the outside. They don't want anyone messing that up. So it's really curious and interesting to see who's going to step up and bid for this building. The American Federation of Government Employees, which represents NSF workers, they call the move absurd and dumbfounding. They say there's been no plan, no communication, and no respect towards the NSF workers. In fact, during a conference recently, they were holding an event, and the workers were chanting NSF. That's all they were chanting it. They were chanting it loud, NSF. they had to relocate that event because of all the chanting. The union has also come out with some wild theories, wild speculation about HUD. They're saying that the Secretary of HUD wants to build like this private dining room experience, and he wants to have a private, luxurious gym and some other things. Now, back in the old building, we had a dining facility. I guess it's like kind of a low down, it's kind of like a rundown cafeteria that we had over there. If you wanted to swing by and spend a few bucks on a cup of coffee, maybe grab a salad or a sandwich, they could hook you up over there. But the gym, well, that cost money. The gym was a monthly cost. It wasn't even a nice gym. Honestly, something at Planet Fitness would probably be way nicer than what they had at HUD, but it was functional, and then time from time, you could catch the secretary in the gym doing those curls, doing those presses. They were getting the workout in. So yeah, if they're going to have a gym in, Alexandria, have a gym. But I think what we're looking for is the entire agency to benefit. A lot of these people, they had to be out of the house now for 10, 11 hours. They're working 8 hours a day. Then you get your 30-minute lunch break. That's 8.5. But then add a commute, add 1-2 hours. It doesn't take long before you end up at an 11-hour, 11.5, 12-hour workday where you're outside of the house. You want people to stay healthy. You want people, not to fall into depression. You need to be able to afford to have the people work out somewhere, ideally in the building. And Secretary Turner called these claims ridiculous, saying that it's about HUD employees, not me. While HUD and NSF employees brace for uncertainty, we have another group that's facing some troubling times. These are not federal workers. These are not federal employees. These are contractors. Defense contractors, government contractors. And they're under pressure right now. So this represents more in spending than the federal workforce. The federal workforce is cheaper to maintain than the money we pay contractors. New data from Indeed shows job postings from the top 25 contractors like Lockheed Martin, United Health, and Booz Allen have dropped 15% since January. Compare that to 0.5% for the rest of the employers. And here's something even more striking. If you look at it, contractor job listings are down 44% since February 2020, while non-contractor jobs are up 14%. Check this graph out. This shows you the relationship between the top contractors and every other employer. That green line is contracting jobs. It popped in 2022, but it's looking pretty rough today. They're just not hiring the same. It's becoming harder to slide out of the military or university and land a contracting job. It used to be a lot easier. They're not hiring the same way. Why? The Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, is driving massive spending cuts. An economist at Indeed said that contracting job listings have been on a nosedive. They've been going straight down. And I was like, Indeed hires economists? What are economists doing at Indeed? Indeed, the website. That company has been doing so well, apparently. They must be very profitable. They have not just one economist, they have a staff of economists over there. I never thought of it. When I first heard of Indeed, it was like a simple startup, website that anybody goes on to. You probably could get hired off of there. Today, it's a little bit harder to get hired if you're trying to look for a job in the private sector. But back then, when it first popped up, you had good chances of actually landing a job. But they have economists now, so that's something. So all of these cuts, they're rippling through industries like defense, healthcare, and consulting, which rely on government contracts. For example, there was a cybersecurity analyst who had worked at Booz Allen, and she was currently working in a federal agency. She was let go. She was told that her job was no longer going to be around, so she's like, well, I'll just jump right into Booz Allen, because not only do they know her, but she knows key people within that company. But she wasn't able to do it. They told her there just was no job openings for her. Even though she has the right experience, Booz Allen doesn't have the funding to bring her on at this time. This is a big deal because these are well-paying jobs, not just contracting jobs, but also federal government jobs. They represent solid middle-class jobs with upward mobility. You cannot find that if you work retail. If you get out of high school or university and you jump into fast food or you jump into retail shopping, you're not going to go far from there. That's like a dead-end job. There's a ceiling that's clearly identifiable. You're not going to progress that much. There's not that much mobility. So What industries are left open right now? If you're thinking, okay, I'm going to jump out of the government or I'm going to jump out of contracting, where should you be looking at if you want to maintain a similar salary? Well, number one is healthcare, then IT and cybersecurity, finance and insurance, or skilled trades and manufacturing. The best one, I would say, if I had to pick only one, I would have my sights lasered in on healthcare. Because even though we're all getting older, everyone's getting older, we're living longer, we're having more problems than ever. We got all kinds of issues and ailments that you have to go to the hospital, go to the clinic. Healthcare seems like a recession-proof job. It is a necessity. It's not a like to have. It is a necessity that people are going to need into the future. So if I had to wager, where am I gonna get skills? How am I gonna prove that I'm helpful and I can help individuals? I would probably do it healthcare. I would tell any young person today, look at healthcare. Now, in addition to this, we have the Government Accountability Office, which is an oversight agency for Congress. It's in the legislative branch. They're being cut in half. There's a budget proposal to reduce half of their funding. But their purpose is to find fraud, waste, and abuse, and they've been doing it for years. That agency is over 100 years old. They have saved this country over $1 trillion, and now it looks like they're in the process of being dismantled. Why would we do that? I thought we were in the efficiency era. Why would we do that? If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.